The son of the late martial artist Bruce Lee has died. Brandon Lee, who was 27 years old, died today in an accident on the set of a movie. A scene for the movie The Crow was being filmed. Brandon Lee was young, smart, and finally getting out from under the shade of his famous father. Then, he was shot and killed on set just days before finishing his big breakout part in The Crow. He was on the ground, his feet and head against the door, with your back to the camera. Everyone was shocked when Brandon didn't get up. The doctor asked, "Brandon, are you okay?" And everyone heard it. It was very quiet there. After that, there was a storm of uncertainty, lies, and never-ending conspiracy theories. Why did a real bullet go into a fake gun? Who forgot to check the gun? And why did they break so many safety rules? We'll look at the scary similarities to Bruce Lee's death, find out what the set's so-called curse really means, and then show the shocking ending that even the police were shocked by. The scene of death that changed everything. The scene was meant to be simple, an everyday action beat in a movie packed with violence, grit, and stylistic revenge. Bruce Lee, who plays Eric Draven in The Crow, was about to break through a hallway with a bag full of groceries when he was attacked by thugs. One of them, played by Michael Massey, would pull out a gun and shoot. Brandon's figure was supposed to fall to the ground in a big way. Everything was carefully planned out. The act had been practiced, and compared to Hollywood gun scenes, it wasn't even that dangerous. While the camera was rolling that night, everything fell apart. As planned, the scene started. Massey put the gun up and pulled the trigger. The shot was loud and came out of nowhere, but no one was scared. Not at first. During filming, the crew had heard dozens of bangs, like this one. It was the right thing for Brandon to do to fall. Massey stayed true to himself. Cut was called by the director. Then there was applause. It looked like they had it right for a moment. Someone then saw that Brandon wasn't moving. At first, things were not clear. The room was filled with a quiet beat of doubt. Did he still act? In search of a second clue? After that, someone called his name. Nothing. Fear spread quickly. A lot of people rushed over. A call for an emergency was made. When the crew turned Brandon over, they saw that his shirt was wet with blood. Not fake blood, real blood coming from a cut in his stomach. He had been shot with a real gun, not a blank or a fake gun that wouldn't hurt him. The set turned into a mess. The ambulances were called. Brandon was taken to the New Hanover Regional Medical Center right away. Went through hours of emergency surgery. Doctors worked hard to stop the bleeding inside the body, but the bullet had already done too much damage. Even though everyone tried, Brandon Lee was declared dead at 1:13 p.m. on March 31, 1993. He was 28 years old. The production team couldn't believe what they were seeing at first. It does happen on set, but never like this. Not when the blanks were meant to be in the prop gun. This makes the gun sound and flash, but it doesn't shoot anything. Still, Brandon's body had been sliced by something very sharp. Everything was badly wrong and could not be fixed. Michael Massey, the actor who went off and shot the person, was heartbroken. As soon as he realized how bad what had happened was, he called it the night that cost him his innocence. Massey didn't do any acting for a long time because she was afraid to talk about that night. A lot of people on the show said that he never really got better. Lee was killed on set. Someone dies in a freak accident. These were the news stories that everyone saw. But behind the news stories, there were a lot of questions that hadn't been answered. What could go wrong on a movie set? Like those seen in the business world. Who was in charge of making sure guns were safe? Why wasn't the gun checked before it was brought to the scene? And most scary of all, what was inside that gun when the trigger was pulled? The official story that came out at the start wasn't very clear. Some thought it was a blank misfire. Some people said that a piece of trash could be stuck in the barrel. But the autopsy report showed that none of those things were true. Brandon's body had a real .40 caliber slug taken out of it. That wasn't just a mistake. There is a gun that can shoot a growing star in front of a whole room of people. It wasn't the first time that set had problems. Not even close. Set for The Curse of the Crow. On the set, people were already chatting about how the crow was cursed long before Brandon Lee fell to the floor. Strange things had been going wrong with the production from the start. A carpenter on the group was B. Adley burned when a piece of equipment he was working on touched live wires just a few weeks into video production. It was a freak accident that could have easily killed someone. 2 other crew members were hurt on the same day in separate events. Someone said bad things about them that day, but the bad luck didn't end there. Set pieces didn't work right. Something broke down. A storm broke down some of the outdoor set. In small but cumulative ways, actors were hurt. People laughed it off at first. As a joke, they began calling it the curse of the crow. There was laughter, but there was increasing unease behind it. There were signs that something wasn't right, even among professionals who had worked on dozens of shows before. After that, the nights were long. The cast and team had to work 18-hour days and meet short deadlines all the time. Some worked 90 to 100 hours a week and could hardly sleep or think straight. You can't keep up that level of tiredness. It's not safe. Some corners were cut. Safety rules became less strict. It was unbearable to have to finish the movie on time. People thought the worst was over because Team Hot. There had already been so many dangerous stunts. They were totally wrong. There was also the story itself, which added to the horrifyingly gloomy mood. The crow story of a man who was killed along with his fiancée and then comes back to life to kill them both. The writing was poetic and dark, with a lot of death and revenge in this gothic tale. Brandon's part as Eric Draven comes back to life after he has died. There was no way anyone could have missed the meaning after he died. The blurred lines were painted because of that dark fantasy for those who saw both worlds. As a production reporter for Entertainment Weekly, Julianne Gary talked about how strange the mood was on the set. She said that things never seemed to go right. As the shooting went on, there was a steady feeling of dread that got worse. A lot of people were already nervous when Brandon was getting ready to film his last scenes. He thought about how many close calls they had been through. They only had to shoot for another week or two, and then they could finally take a break. They didn't know it yet, but the worst danger was yet to come. It was never thought to have been a big deal that Brandon would die in that scene. There was no need for a stunt double, and there were no blasts or fires. It was as easy as Brandon bringing groceries through a door. The video cuts off after he is shot and falls. Done. Strange things don't happen on a regular basis. Still, it turned out to be the saddest part of the whole show. How the movie was made. After Brandon's death, a lot of people started to think about their own lives, about what would happen to the crow from the beginning, and we had to wait for hours. Then they told us that he had died, as if causing it to be doomed before the shooting even started. Some people thought magical forces were at work. Something that happened was related to the script itself by some. There was a bad theme running through the whole story of killing and resurrection. Very few people talked about how close Brandon was to death on a personal level, considering that he lost his father, Bruce Lee, when he was only 8 years old, and the circumstances were very strange. One member of the team has said that he will only talk if he can remain anonymous. Some people have said it was cursed. That doesn't make sense to me. But it was clear that the set had bad vibes. The truth about the gun that killed him? It would show something much worse than a curse. The gun that shot. After the shock and sadness had worn off, investigators turned their attention to one very important question. How did a real bullet get into a gun used in a movie? It wasn't a misfired blank or a trick gone wrong. The autopsy proved that Brandon Lee's belly had been pierced by a full .44 caliber slug. This ended the false belief that this was just a freak accident. It meant that someone in the chain of command had made a fatal mistake and filled that gun with a bullet that could kill. A real goo. A Smith Wesson Model 629-44 Magnum handgun was used in the scene. It's common in Hollywood to use real guns to make things seem more real. They've been changed so that they can shoot blanks, which make a loud bang and a flash from the muzzle. Things went very badly wrong this time, though. This is what really happened. The team had already shot a close-up scene with the same revolver earlier in the shoot. To make it look real, the gun had to look like it was loaded, so fake rounds were used. Even though these look like real bullets, they're not meant to do anything. It's only for show. There's no powder or filler. But the sets team did something very wrong. They took out the gunpowder but left the primer in the fake rounds while they did it. In a real bullet, the starter lights the powder, which fires the bullet. A starter still has a small explosive charge in it, even if there is no powder in it. During the previous close-up, one of the fake rounds was dry-fired. The primer went off just enough to push the bullet out of its case and into the gun's barrel. This is known as a squib load. No one saw it. After that, no one checked the barrel. The bullet stayed in the gun's barrel, ready to kill at any moment. A few days later, fake bullets were taken out of the barrel to get ready for Brandon's scene, and only blanks were put in their place. While blanks have gunpowder and a primer, they don't have a ball at the end. For the movie, they are made to look and sound like real gunshots, but they don't actually fire a projectile. Instead, they use flashes, smoke, and sound. But when there was a blank behind a stuck bullet in the tube, something horrible took place. When Michael Massey pulled the trigger, the blank caught fire. The heat and pressure from the fire forced the stuck bullet out of the barrel as if it were a live round. There was no sign. There wasn't a jam. Brandon was on the ground after hearing a loud gunshot and seeing a flash of light. It was too late by the time anyone could see things clearly. It wasn't just a mistake. A lot of people were careless. The weapon should have been checked out. The practice rounds should have been made correctly. At the very least, a professional armorer should have checked out the gun before any live pyrotechnics were used on the set. But this is the scariest part. That night, there was no qualified weapons master on the set. Instead, a prop assistant who was likely stressed, tired, and not trained handled a working gun while knowing the risks it posed to their job. Probably none. Anywhere else, this level of carelessness would be considered a crime. People in Hollywood called it a mistake. Later, the official probe confirmed that these are the events that led to Brandon's death. The report called what happened an accident, but many people in the business and Brandon's close family thought it was more like criminal negligence. There was one small mistake and one safety check that wasn't done. It's official. The CU curse has hit us again. Certain events, like those that happened on the Crow, happened before Brandon's injury. One bullet that didn't belong there. And 10 minutes from now, a growing star's life will be over. But why did some people start talking about mischief if it was all just carelessness? No matter what, we will never use real guns again, on TV, in movies, or anywhere else. It turns out that there was a disturbing trend going on during the making of The Crow that goes far beyond a single tragic mistake. Brandon Lee died because of a web of shortcuts, tiredness, misunderstandings, and safety rules that were too lax. It wasn't just a computer glitch that caused what happened that night. It was what would happen when a movie set was pushed past its limits. The Crow was running on a tight budget and tight deadline. It wasn't a big hit for the company. It was a rough action movie with a medium budget that tried to make every dollar count. As the shoot went on, the need to finish quickly grew. It cost money to wait, and that cost money to risk. So rules were broken, cuts were cut, and roles that should have been filled by experts were given to tired staff who had little room for error. The armorer for the movie, who was officially in charge of all the weapons on set, wasn't even there when Brandon was shot. That job had been given to a prop helper, someone who has never been trained in gun safety. They didn't have the right licenses or certifications and didn't fully understand how to clear or check a gun the right way. There were even reports that the same crew was working on both real and fake rounds, mixing them up without much thought during earlier scenes. It makes sense that 3 people should check a gun before it is considered safe. The player, the chief of staff, and the armorer. The Crow skipped right past that whole chain of duty. It was loaded, given to the actor, and shot without anyone checking to make sure it was safe. It wasn't just that night that was risky. It was how the shoot felt as a whole. Later, crew members said they worked 18-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes going over 90 hours. That level of tiredness is not only bad for you, but also very dangerous, since every set has stunts, fireworks, and guns. No longer were things checked twice. A lot of mistakes were made. In order to be on time, warnings were not taken into account. A member of the team who did not want to be named said that safety measures were not taken at all. It could have been avoided if business had been run better. As you might expect, the studio denied those statements. They said that the cast and crew were professionals and that it was normal for people in the business to work in tough circumstances. In private, even some of the leaders said that the schedule had been very hard. People were tired from the shoot. The most scary fact? The fake rounds that were used before. The same ones that gave the stuck bullet. They made them right there in the office.